lead us off with the first question for Tom. So, Tom, given today's current environment, what advice would you give to firms who are, maybe feeling a little stuck between a rock and a hard place of not really knowing what to do?
Thanks, Joe. First of all, I love that. I love the slide about the progressive and pragmatic, and the progressive to me is what we called during the downturn in 2008, 2009. Our mantra was, we're not participating in a downturn. And that's what the progressives do. There's enough out there that I can take from others, because when you're looking at those numbers, you've got people that are slowing down, they're hitting the brakes. Those are the people to take from. But if we are, and if your business in particular, or your market, or your industry or vertical is in a slowdown, your competitors are slowing down even more. And when you ask, what's the biggest mistake that people do, is companies do exactly what their competitors want them to do. And that's what you always need to be thinking about is this what my competitor wants me to do? Because cutting staff, stopping hiring, stop selling, stop recruiting, coming up with a bunch of excuses of why I can't continue to grow, just kind of self-defeating talk, is exactly what they want to do.
The message here is that these cycles fluctuate. The situation that we're in will change, most likely for the better, sooner than most of us expect. The demographics of our industry are such that we can expect a significant labor shortage beginning in the second half of this decade. We want to get prepared for that. So we want to capture market share and get prepared for accelerating growth the second half of this decade.
Tom, I think the most frustrating thing in a time like this is the stagnation. Making a decision to take no action is still making a decision. And I think that's where some firms get a little bit lost, is the choice of inaction is still a choice that can and is oftentimes detrimental to an organization. So, sitting and writing it out, and we saw a lot of that in Q1, kind of shoving your hands in your pockets, going, everything's on hold. And that is still a very deliberate decision in not investing back in the business. Now, look, I'm all for safety first, understanding what you're walking into. However, we in this particular industry tend to draw things out a little bit.
Maybe keep going here. What should people be doing to optimize their existing processes? Love to hear from you first, and then maybe Marisa on that.
First, understand who you are, right? Start with the mission, vision, and values, and wrap everything that you do, inclusive of technology and process, around who you want to be and the experiences you want to create. Remembering you have three customers in this whole thing: your candidates, your clients, and your internal colleagues. It's really important.
Staffing firms have a surprisingly large amount of processes. So documenting a lot of processes within your staffing firm, I think, is imperative. But if you don't have the time or the resources to document everything, focus in on your most important processes, and specifically focusing in on those metrics that you really want to influence or improve upon, because it will make a difference within your business. So
one thing about process is that if you really boil it down, if you don't have processes in place, you're winging it. You're making stuff up as you go along. Your team is making stuff up. They're all doing things differently. And that's not the way to run a company. That's not the way, and it's not in the best interest of the company. It's not in the best interest of your employees.
When it comes to culture and fostering connections, can you lead us off with just talking about how important training is, and even more so ongoing training with processes and technology in place?
That's a great question. So first of all, culture matters hugely. And as consultants, as we work with different companies, we see significant differences between companies and the culture, and specifically around innovation. We can tell when we're working with our different clients where innovation is really being encouraged within the organization.
So, ensuring that you're developing programs that are agile, because technology is. Oftentimes I see firms coming in and they've create one training program, one and done. This is an ongoing commitment to continuing to scale your training. And oftentimes when we see, a more depressed market, or we see things slowing down, what gets cut? Marketing and training. It infuriates me because that's the time, that's the opportunity to get in front of your end users and create a culture of acceptance of change, get people excited about it.
Yeah, I think
And really,
agree with everything both of you said. You know, there's different types of cultures. You started off talking about culture, and there's culture around training and development. There's culture around technology. There's culture around accountability. There's culture around just, how what type of work environment you're in, work-life balance, all that kind of stuff. But if we talk about training in particular, as an industry, we do a pretty poor job of training people even from the very beginning. It's usually sit there and watch how Sally works, and Sally picked it up from somebody else, before, and you'll pass it along to somebody else. And,
so maybe Tom, talk a little bit more about, how firms can be thinking about innovation at a time like this.
Remove yourself a little bit. And when we start talking about innovation, it's, what is it that the future is looking like? What is it that we're heading towards? And as we talk about process, we need to integrate the technology into that process rather than have it sit on top or to the side or as an afterthought or whatever. So
I think we as an industry put a ton of pressure on ourselves to innovate. We want to throw money or people at the problem. And as opposed to understanding that innovation can come in different shapes and forms, like looking at your process and going, okay, if I sell time and I'm trying to reduce from view to check or from view to apply, what is that the most ideal process? Realigning that process, maybe even reconfiguring it with the existing technology that you have. That is still innovating.
All great points, Tom and Lauren. I think the future of the staffing industry is really going to be built around innovation. And I think that there's just so much opportunity to innovate. The challenge is where do we actually innovate? Because there's areas where we can innovate, but it doesn't have much impact. And there's areas where we can innovate. And when we apply these ideas, the right ideas, we can make a significant improvement in the operations of the business. So
maybe give one thing that you suggest, our attendees could take away from this webinar today, in order to stay ahead of the competition we've talked about and not, fight that urge, as I've talked about, is, to hunker down.
So I would just say that press on, don't be self-fulfilling when it comes to any kind of adversity or thinking that things are slowing down. Because if you do, then you slow down and you're going to, it's self-fulfilling. It's going to happen. So,
is that where you put your focus is where you get your result. And if you're putting your focus on dismal results, that's what you're going to continue to get. If you're going to put your focus on how do we, continue to move forward, how do we continue to get results? Sometimes, but again, I'll say in our industry, we do tend to overcomplicate. And so understanding where you put your energy is where you're going to get your result, and keeping things simple, understanding that innovation comes in many different shapes and forms. But if you stay true to your mission, vision, and values as your North Star, it creates connection. It creates agility. It creates adaptation. All of these things come together when we give people something to connect to, leveraging technology to do so.
And right now, I think automation is one of the areas where we can really affect our futures positively. So it's one of the highest ROI investments that you can make as, with your staffing firm. So there's never been a better opportunity to invest in automation to gain efficiencies, but also to create competitive advantages for yourself and differentiate your firm from other firms. So if there's one piece of advice I would give, and that is to double down on investments in automation.